How are you?
Fantastic so far.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I was just thinking about wearing that shirt, Sabrina.
What's that?
I said I was just thinking about wearing that shirt.
Oh
Right.
yeah, I'm so ready for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We would have been twins on tonight's call. Nice, nice, nice. All right. Well, yeah, we'll begin started shortly. So I hope everyone is prepared, has some questions. And to be honest, this training might be relatively like quicker than some of the others, because it'll be kind of like very straight to the point. But I know sometimes this is sometimes a question that a lot of people may have as far as like why and why the design looks the way it does and so on and so forth. So I wanted to just shed some light on that. And hopefully, we all get a chance to see from a bigger perspective of how a design actually impacts a solar deal. So we'll begin started with that shortly. But pleasure to see everyone jumping on. Hope everyone's had an amazing day. And I know it's not over yet. It's about to continue to get more and more amazing. So we got it's a power-packed day so far.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yep, yep, yep. All right. I know some people are still jumping on, so we'll give it until maybe about 2 more minutes before we go ahead and get started full-fledged.
Did you make me co-host as well? Thank you.
Yes, we will do for sure.
Okay.
Appreciate that. I think Omi will be able to do that for you for sure, no problem.
Okay.
And thank you, Omi, again for everything that you do. Greatly appreciate it. I know I speak for everyone on the call when we say we appreciate everything you do, so thank you.
Yes.
Oh me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So 1 more minute, team, before we go ahead and get rocking and rolling. I guess to start it off, any specific questions or just thoughts on the design so far before we go ahead and get started? I'll take one or two questions before we start. Anyone? Any questions at all? Not quite.
So
Okay.
is it
Oh, go
is
ahead.
it
Yeah.
is it
Caller.
is it advantageous to for the design to be on the south side, or is it depending upon how the sun comes up in based on the address?
Yep. And definitely gonna go through that. I would say that just to answer the question, definitely, I would say on the south side would be ideal. And I'm gonna show you exactly why. Right. So great question. And that's kind of like the perfect way to lead us into everything that we're doing. You must have been reading my mind. All right. That's literally one of the perfect questions to start everything off with. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I know we still have some people jumping in, but I know Omi will be able to help out. So let me know if you guys can see the screen.
Yep,
Are we
we see it.
recording?
Are we recording? No. Omi, can you restart? Can you start the recording on me, please? Let's see. Let's see. Let me get that set up for us. Yeah, I think Omi has to do it. There we go. Appreciate you, Miss Dr. George. Definitely appreciate that. So, welcome to tonight's training. We're going to jump into the art of making a solar design, right? And I know we just had Miss Wynn ask an amazing question on where the panel should be placed, whether it's more advantageous to put the panels on the south side or on the north side. And really understanding the dynamics of that. Now, I'll start off by saying the positioning of where you put the panels can easily is going to create the deal, right? It's going to either make the deal a sellable deal or not that it won't be sellable, but you may have to come from a different angle, right? And I'll actually be able to show that in more detail. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Please, someone just give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen here. And we actually get a chance, appreciate that, get a chance to use a few designs here from a few people on the team, right? So one of the first questions that we had, let me just look at the notes here real quick, was, let's see. Okay. So why does the solar design look like that, right? So this design here will probably use for all we can use for all of our questions that we had for tonight. But I want you to take a look at something, right? So before I even get to the design, this house, and this is all for example purposes only, but this house produces 9,215 kilowatt hours for the year, right? This is how much electricity they use for the year. Yeah, so because of that, what we want to do is we want to create a system that can actually let me take these off that can produce that amount of electricity, right? So whenever we're looking at a house, this is usually how it starts off, and the design is the AI design is put together, and it basically shows us how many panels we could put on the roof. Right? So this is a lovely roof that we're showing here because it's facing in two directions, right? It's facing south and then north, right? So whenever we look at a design, we want ideally roof planes, and this is a roof plane that face south. But obviously every situation doesn't, allow for that to take place. But in this case, for this design, it actually faces south and north, right? So I want you guys to take a look at this. Now, once again, usage here is 9,215 kilowatts for the year, right? So I want you to see the difference of how many panels we would need to use if we use the north-facing side, right? So we're gonna rock with that. Let's see, you see here it says 67%. Well, that's not enough, right? Our goal is always to get at 100%, right? And that's the reason for creating the design to get to 100% to the best of our ability, right? So we fill up the entire north side, right? You see that we are at 100%. So I can't guarantee this is accurate until I finalize it. So let me go ahead and finalize that deal, or that design, I should say. Right? And there's some interesting things that are going to pop up. So it's loading, and it's letting us know that it's doing all of the calculation. Now, the calculation that takes place here is literally how many daylight hours that side of the roof is going to get. It's calculating any shading that's taking place. It's calculating any and everything that's going to create the necessary offset that we need. So once all of the calculations are done, if you can see here, right, we're basically covering 100% of their electricity, right? So this is good, right? However, this is on the north side, north facing side of the roof. So I'm showing you the comparison between the north and the south, right? So 100%. Let's look at this tab here, and it's going to give us some statistics about the north facing side, right? So with the panels just facing on the north side, you see we're using 31 panels, right? And they're all facing north, right? Now, is this a good situation? It could be, right? But let me show you the comparison. In addition to that, and I want you guys to take notes on this. So all north facing, if you can, right? So the panels all on the north facing side, we're using 31. We have to use 31 to cover 100% of its electricity, right? And that's usually called offset, right? So cover 100%, we use 31 panels. Just for example purposes, now let's just look at the price, right? Now, don't look at, don't get caught up in all of this stuff right here. None of this matters. Just look at the monthly price right here, 176. So I have the panels on all of the north facing side is 176, right? And once again, 31 panels. Now let's go back to the drawing board. And this is to show you the comparison, right? Now let's take all of these off, right? I'm going to unhighlight all of these, right? And remember, it was 31 panels on the north facing side. Now let's light up all of these on the south facing side. And let's see what and if there is a difference. Right? So we already see here it's about 154% offset. Now that looks much better, right? But let's see what happens once it finalizes. Once again, it's calculating, it's doing the numbers. Right? So it's finally analyzed at 150%. Now, there's a few things that I want you guys to understand. On the north-facing side, we use 31 panels. On the south-facing side, we're using 26 panels, and it's at 150% offset. Basically meaning it's producing 50% more than is actually needed, right? And we're using less panels, right? So obviously 150%, let's just say our target is 100%, which means I can take some panels off. So let me take off the top row. Let me see where that leaves us. Right? And it's doing the math, it's doing the math, it's calculating, calculating, calculating. Right? Let it think. The AI is thinking. Right?
Hey, Idris,
Yes, sir.
how did you come up with 9,100 kilowatt hours? You already put the months in already?
Yep. It's just for example purposes with this
Okay.
one.
All right.
All right. So we took the top row off, and obviously there's some obstructions here. So these are usually vents, vent poles and things of that nature. So we took the top row off, and we're still at 109%. Right. So now let's take another panel or two off possibly and see where that leaves us. So we take two panels off. Now we're at 100%. Let's save this. Let's see what it looks like afterwards. Once again, our target is 100 or right above.
How many panels is that?
Let's check. Let's check and see. It says 17 so far. Right. So with 17 panels, we're at 98%. Right. So good situation, but let's make it at 100. Let's see if we add one more panel, which one would be closer to 100, with the panel on or the panel off. We're gonna go with whatever option is closest to 100%. So once
Idris,
again,
oh,
yep.
sorry.
No,
Does
go
it
ahead.
matter, like when you're on that south side of roof, and I noticed that you have them at the bottom. Does it matter if you put, like, say you only need two rows, but you could have four? Does it matter if it's closer to the bottom or closer to the top?
Not necessarily, but that's a great question, right? And if you do you see the shadow here? I'm so glad you asked that. If you see the shadow here, in some cases, some homes are relatively close, and this shadow may shade a little bit on the lower end of the roof, right?
Okay.
So if you see that in the design, then instead of putting them on the lower end, then I will put them on the top. In this case, I don't think it shadows at all. I think it's at a good enough distance where it won't shade the roof at all. So at the bottom, looks ideal. And another reason why I put them on the bottom is because the bottom has less obstructions than the top,
Okay.
right? So the way I always try to design a system is to make sure that it looks as appealing as possible, because we already know that that might be an objection. So I want to get around and avoid that objection to the best of my ability, right? So once again, with just the two rows here, right, and I added that one panel, so we're at 104. So I'm going to take that last panel off and go from 17 to 18. All right, just to get more closer or closest, I should say, to 100%. All right, because at 17 panels, we were at 89, no, 98%, I'm sorry. Right. And I just want to be, just once again, show you the comparison. Right. So first and foremost, with the north side, we've already used 31 panels to get to 100% offset. Right. With the south facing side, we're using 17, 18 panels to get to roughly 100%. Right. So it's almost double the amount that you need to use on the north facing side than you do on the south facing side. But in the first and foremost, before I even continue, does that make sense to everyone so far?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Absolutely, right?
Yes,
Now,
sir. Sure does.
for all of the panels on the north facing side, once again, 31 panels, the price came to, correct me if I'm wrong, if anyone who wrote it down, but the price came to 153. Is that correct?
You said 176.
It was
Yeah,
176?
177.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So now let's look at the price with the panels on the south facing side. Obviously, it's less amount of panels, but it's also a higher production. So now let's look at the price.
Are you doing
90,
17 or 18 panels?
say it again.
Are you doing 17 panels or 18
17.
panels? Okay.
17,
Okay.
right? So basically producing the same amount of electricity, right? We're using less panels, and then the price is basically cut in half,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this is why when doing a design, the south-facing side of the house is always ideal, right? Now, depending on where the house is facing or shaped or whatever the case may be, uh, you may not have the south side to work with, right? But that's always the first place you want to look first. Now, obviously, this is something that I know when you do it often, more than enough times, then you get used to it. But this is also something to look out for if you're out knocking doors, canvassing, generating leads, things of that nature, just to have an idea. And I'm also going to show some more information about that as well. Yes, Jeremy.
So, uh, just curious why you would go with the 98% instead of the 104%.
Yep. So with the design, I wouldn't go with the 90, and I'm glad you asked that as well. I wouldn't go with the 98%. I was just trying to get whatever panel count was closest to 100 instead of further away from it. So I can use the most accurate comparison, right? So I believe on the other side, when we put all of the panels on the north facing side, it got to 100%, right? But when we came here, if I added another panel, it would have went to 104%, which is a little bit further away than obviously 98. Does that make sense? Personally, if I was
So,
looking to close this deal, I would do over 100,
so what
right?
is the price point for 104%?
What was the price point at 104%?
Mm-hmm. Just
Let's take a look.
curious. Yes.
Let's take a look. Let's take a look. Let's wait till this finalizes. Now let's open this up. Okay. 102, right? So with the 18 panels and covering 104% of their usage and went to 102. Right. So once again, just really seeing and understanding the difference between the south-facing side and the north-facing side. That's basically what the difference is. I wanted to most importantly, I wanted to show you the difference in production, right? How many more panels you need to use when you're putting it on the north-facing side. Also, how many less panels or least amount of panels you need to put on the south-facing side, right? It makes a big difference. Now, this is something for us to know, not necessarily for the customer to know or a client to know, right? So this is not information that you'll ever hear me discuss too much to the client, right? So, for instance, actually, Jeremy, I know you have your hands up, raised up, but this came to me yesterday based on the client that you spoke to, and you had, we got on a three-way, and I spoke to him. So, actually, Jeremy, do you want to jump on and explain that situation? And I'll be able to answer your question as well.
Well, I just forgot to lower my hand, but yeah. So I called Idris yesterday because he had two different solar companies that had told him that they would not put it on the backside of the house. So I wanted to confirm with Idris if we would be able to do it. So that was pretty much part of the call.
Absolutely. And basically, the client, just to reiterate, the client basically said, hey, I had two other people come by and they keep telling me that we can't put it on the north-facing side of the roof, right? So it's not that we can't put it on the north-facing side. We can put it on the north-facing side if that's what the customer wants and that's all they can get. However, the economics of the deal, as I just showed you, changes a little bit, right? So from 102 to 170 something, as Carla mentioned earlier, right? There's a difference in pricing, right? So in that situation, what we would be, going over or closing the deal on would not necessarily be on the monthly amount, right? It would be more on the overall cost of the system with us and what they would be paying to their utility bill over the next 25 years, right? And once again, let me see if I have some of that information available here. I don't think it's going to show up.
While you're looking for that, Idris,
Yes, Miss Dr. George, yes, please.
other than obstruction,
Mhm.
would there be any and the client saying, hey, I prefer the north side, would there be any other reasons for recommending north versus south?
Yes, beautiful question as well. So in this situation, let's say there's a homeowners association, right? And they say you cannot put panels on, let's say this was the front side of the house, right? And they say, okay, we can't put panels on the front. We can only put panels on the back. Then if that's the option that we're left with, then we only have the backside to put panels on, right? Now, this is why I say I wouldn't necessarily mention this to the client because then at this point we have to work with what we have, right? So that could be another reason why the north side would be the only option. Also, if there's possibly trees or shading on the south-facing side, then we would need to put them on the north. And I think those are the two main reasons. But every time I look at a design, I'm always looking at the south-facing side first to see what advantage I have. Sometimes you'll have clients who say, I don't want it on the south because that may be the front. I only want it on the back. And like I said, you just got to kind of work with that as it comes. Yes, Thomas?
Yes. So in this scenario with this home,
Mhm.
what if this person's usage was more? Let's say their usage was 20,000 kilowatts a year, and and you needed to use both sides of the house, both south and north. If you use the north and the south, will the south produce better because it has more sunlight, than the north, or will they produce the same since let's say you put 22 on both sides because you need it, because that's what their needs are. Will they produce the same, or will the north side produce lesser than the south side?
So once again, great question. And I know this is a very a personal situation for you. But right. But that is a good question, and let me explain that, right? So as you can see here on the south-facing side, once again, we're using 18 panels, and the 18 panels here are producing 104%, right? So let's take these panels off the south side and let's put 18 on the other side and see what that produces, right? So let's see what that produces. How many is that? That's 21. Let's take a few off. One more. Okay, so there's 18 panels on the south, I'm sorry, on the north facing side. Let's finalize that. Okay, wait for the AI to load or to think. Right. And once again, as it's doing this, it's doing all of the calculations based on shading, based on sunlight hours, so on and so forth. So once again, to show you the difference of the question you just asked, Thomas. So 18 panels on the south-facing side is producing 104%. 18 panels on the north-facing side is producing 57%, right? Now, in some situations, if your usage was, let's say, double, right? So let me just click here to show you. Let's say it was double this, and let's just do that for an example purposes, right? So the average here is 7,068. So let's just use twice that number. That would be about 14, about 1,004, let's just say 1,500, right? 1,500. Now, once again, this is just for uh, uh, example purposes. And who do we have? We have someone with the hand. Yes. Yes, Kip. Go ahead. You can ask your question as I put this in.
Yeah, my question was, uh, at any point, if we get any pushback from HOA that tries to um, steamroll a potential client, let them know like, oh, it just doesn't look good here or there, and then ultimately it causes that client to not be able to get the solar at all. Is there a way to go around that or go around the HOA that they're hindering that client from having technology?
That's a good question. That's a great question. And I have someone who's an expert at getting around HOAs. And I'll let him speak, for himself. And you can be clear and transparent, Thomas, if you can, just to let him know that answer.
Okay, that's a great question. When I was thinking about when I was starting my solar process, I knew that my neighbor next door, he and I have a house built the same, which means there's 3 homes in a 400 home subdivision that does not have a back roof. Our roofs are, this is really my roof right here. So my roof is on both sides, the north and the south, but in the back, I don't have a roof. So I knew from him that the HOA declined him from going solar because they required the solar to go on the back of the roof, the back of the house. So basically, I knew that going into it. So what I did was I got the approval from the HOA up front. They approved the job, but they gave a condition, and that condition was we approve you to go solar, but it has to go on the back roof. As you can see, I don't have a back roof. So what I did was I said, okay. I said to myself, only 3 homes in the 400 home subdivision can't go solar. So I sent an email to them and I said, hey, listen, thank you for approving me to go solar, but we have a problem because I don't have a back roof. I didn't build my house. I didn't build my home. I just bought it and live here. I said, so that means that 397 other homes can go solar today, but I can't go solar. And I put the words in there, that is not legally fair. So to make a long story short, because I didn't just let them tell me I couldn't go solar like my neighbor did, who never went solar. I fought it. I sent that email and I sent pictures of my home. I sent pictures of the back of my home without a roof and the side of my home. And the HOA did approve me to go solar and to place the solar panels where you guys see them on the north and the south. So their rule was no solar panels could go on the side or in the front of the house. That was their rule. They had to go in the back. So they did reverse their call. They gave me a favorable answer that I could go solar on the side of my house. So back to you.
Yep. And
And
yeah,
what and
just
what was the verbiage? What was that verbiage that you had wrote in the email stating you said that is not legally fact, or that was not legally what?
It's not legally fair that 397 homes in my subdivision can go solar. 3 homes in the subdivision cannot because we don't have roofs. And the way I knew there were 3 homes in the subdivision couldn't because me and my neighbor stay right next door. And then there's a house up front of the subdivision that I know that doesn't have a back roof. So I just kind of used the terminology that it wasn't legally fair that I could not go solar.
Okay,
yep.
thank you.
And just to give you guys more context of what he's mentioning, what Thomas just mentioned, this is the neighbor who looked into solar multiple times, but got denied, right? And in Thomas's subdivision, there's, I believe, just 3 homes like this, right? That have this types of roofs facing
Correct.
in south and
Correct.
north,
Right.
right? Thomas is one of 3, right? Every other home has a back, right? They have a back, right? But his doesn't. So in the case of the HOA, when you come across that situation, right? Thomas just fought it, right? And in addition to Thomas fighting it, Freedom did their part and we were able to get the job done, right? So I like that testimony because it kind of gives us the understand. This is what all your mentors, consultants should be doing on your behalf to kind of like make sure that we get the deal. Now, Thomas, obviously, because he's in the business of build and solar, he had the foresight to kind of like do it himself, right? But the goal should be to fight for your client to make sure that you can get it done, right? And he was able to get it done. Right. So
And,
just
and another thing, Idris, I'll say is that Freedom has a HOA department. So what we initially did was we gave the HOA information to Freedom. Freedom did reach out to them. Freedom gave them the designs and all that up front. I didn't really reach out to them until the end when they gave me the condition that I couldn't go solar that I had to put the solar on the back of the roof. So Freedom does a great job. They know the lingo. They know they do this. This is what they do. They deal with HOAs all the time. So before Freedom couldn't learn that I had to put it on the back of the roof, I just took the initiative to contact them myself through email. Freedom was very appreciative that I got it approved. So we worked together. Freedom and I really worked together because Freedom did all the heavy lifting up front. And that's what they do with HOA. They contact the HOA, they send the design, they do all that with HOA. Your client doesn't really have to do much of anything unless they have to do what I did. So that's it.
absolutely. And yeah, just to add to that, I should say just to condition your expectations, right? That doesn't mean that in every situation that we're going to be able to get past the HOA, right? Obviously, HOAs are in place for specific reasons, right? But it doesn't hurt to try, right? And what I've realized is in this industry, there's I don't want to say there's rules and they're there for you to break them, but once again, there should be some wiggle room for you to work some things out. Sometimes you just have to try. Sometimes you have to just come up with creative reasons of why and at least try to move the job forward, right? So just to get back to the question that Thomas asked, he asked basically if we needed to use both sides of the roof, right? Um, could we? Absolutely, right? If your usage was once again twice the amount that I was using earlier as an example, then yes, we would need to use both sides of the roof. And the economics just work out differently, right? Sometimes ideally they'll always be in your favor, but whenever you have panels on the north facing side, it just raises the price, as you guys already seen earlier, right? Does that make sense? Perfect, perfect, perfect. So as we kind of just move forward, let's see, I want to open up another design. This design, not too much happening there. But this is another design here. Let me see if I changed it. Yep. So this is another design here, and this is actually one of Dennis's designs, right, that we were working with. And this homeowner had a lot of usage going on in the house, right? But I just want to show you the difference. Now, in this house, I believe that the homeowner didn't necessarily want panels on the front, right? And that's fine, right? Obviously, the largest space of their house is the back. So that's ideally where we would put it. So what we did is we took all of these off and we showed them what the usage would be or how much we would be able to cover with the panels just on the back, right? And you'll see this in a second, right? So sometimes you'll have a client who has a home like this and you see the front of their house is facing north, right? But they have the sides of their house which is facing east and west, right? But I'm sorry, the front of their house is facing south and the back of the house is facing north, and they may say, I don't want any panels on the front. That's fine, right? What I always do is I'll show them exactly what they have, right? And what we can do. So just putting panels, even though, what is this, 42 panels on the south facing side, on the north facing side, I'm sorry, right? 42 panels, we're only covering their electricity needs at 53%. Now, whenever someone says, I don't want them on the front, this actually happened in a consultation with Miss Wen the other day. We have a homeowner that says, I don't want them on the front. So we show them, this is what we can do with the panels on the back, right? And now I'll show them with the panels on the front as well. So we can't do on the back, or we can do only on the back, but we can do on the back and the front, right? And now once they see, okay, well, let's wait till it loads, right? And it'll load. And now we have, instead of, I believe it was 42, now we have 68, right? So obviously a little bit more, right? Which is good, right? About 26 more panels, right? So just with 26 more panels on the front, we're able to get the job at 100%. So once again, 42 on the back, 26 on the front, and we're at 100%. Usually, once you now show the homeowner, okay, this is what we can only do on the back, on the north facing side, but this is what we could do if we added panels on the front as well. Usually, they become more conscious about, okay, the goal here is to get off of the electricity grid, right? And now a client has to make a decision, right? Do I care that much about having panels on the front of the house and people seeing it or whatever the case may be? Or is my goal to cover all of my electrical needs, right? This is a decision usually in the consultation that you'll start seeing the client thinking about this and they'll kind of make the decision on their own, right? It's not my job or our job to sell them on which option is better. Now, there is an option that I would prefer, obviously, but I'm not going to sell them on which one is better, right? I want them to kind of make that decision for themselves, right? But once again, as Dr. George asked earlier, if there's an issue where we can't put them on the front, all right, because of the HOA or whatever the case may be, right, then we'll just have to offer them whatever is going to be on the back, right? And whatever we can put on the back is what it is, right? Does that make sense?
Yes. Do you have
Awesome.
any examples of flat roofs
Flat roof.
installation? Hmm.
I do. I don't have them pulled up.
Okay.
But yeah, I could actually show. I don't know the flat roof. I don't know the names of the clients of the flat roofs just off the top of my head. So, but that is a good one, and I can show you.
Hey,
But
Idris, I'm sorry. Before you move on about this home right here, I see a
yep.
pool. I see a big house here. And I know we're not going over this tonight, but is this a home that also where the customer wanted a storage battery, or I don't know what state this is in,
Mhm.
for backup or storage? I'm just kind of curious with the size of the system if they were interested in the battery.
I don't remember off the top of my head if this client per se was interested in a battery. But the way I usually talk about the battery for a homeowner is if it's something that they bring up, right? So I'll ask them the question about blackouts, right? And blackout protection. I'll ask them about self-consumption, and I'll see if it's something that sparks any interest in them, right? And the reason why is because when you add a battery to the design, it changes once again the economics of the deal, right? So you'll have some people, some consultants who kind of like overly, well, they'll not force, but they'll consider, they'll push the battery a lot. And in some cases, it may be necessary. However, right, I always want the client to make the decision. So good question. Let me show you the difference real quick, right? And we'll show the difference at 100%. And then I'll move on to the next one real quick. Um, I do have a I have a flat roof color. I'll show you a flat roof design in a second because that'll be a good one to show as well. Let me just show you the design difference, right? Okay, sorry. Okay, so you see the price here is 209, right? And when we look at the finance amount, it's a $54,000 system, and this is with no battery, but it's covering 100%. Good situation, right? Now, when
Yeah.
we add battery, right, and I'm gonna add the Tesla Powerwall. That's the most popular battery, and it does the most. I'm not gonna get into battery training just for the sake of time, but I just want you to see the price difference, right? So we've added 13,500 into the deal, and the monthly amount went from 209 and it's gonna switch, right? And now it went to 291, right? Now let's look at what the overall, and it went up to $76,000, right? So once again, this is why I always ask questions about, right? What situation the homeowner is going through, right? Are they dealing with blackouts? Are the blackouts manageable, right? And here's what I mean by manageable. Some people have blackouts for, 10 to 30 minutes, right? And then in some areas, right, obviously where there's, weather conditions, things of that nature, you may have someone that has a blackout for a few hours, 5, 6 hours, if not days, right? I'll ask those questions to figure out what the situation of the homeowner is, and then I'll go based on what they say, right? So if they have an issue and they kind of feel like they need the battery, then we'll show it. If it's not something that I feel like they need based on the questions that I ask, then once again, it's not that I hide away from it. It's just whenever someone's looking at a solar deal, they're always looking at the price, right? So the more the price changes, right, and the more the price goes up, the least interested in some cases that they are, right? Nobody wants to see the price go up. Also, in some cases, a homeowner might think that you're trying to upsell them, right? And this is why I ask the questions up front, get an understanding of what they're comfortable with paying if it's needed, and then I let them tell me whether we should add it on or not. Does that make sense? I'll take that as a yes.
Thanks, Idris. Appreciate that, man. That's
Absolutely.
awesome. That's
Uh,
awesome.
So for those who are looking to door knock, right? And there's different tools and apps that you could use to figure out what houses are usually ideal. But I'm a pretty simple person, right? So I'll just go to Google Earth, or this is Google Maps, and I'll actually pull up the map and I'll get an idea of a specific area, right? And I'll look up the area to see the homes in that area and ideally what direction those homes face, right? So if you see this map here, right, is in a specific location in South Carolina, right? And all of these homes here, as you've noticed, as you may notice, right, they all have the back of their house all face south, right? So if I was going to knock somewhere, if I was going to knock in this area, right, I would probably knock all of these houses first, right? Why? Because they have all of the back sides of their roof face south. Right. Now, does that mean that we're not going to have to put anything on the north facing side? Not at all. But the back sides of their roof all face south, right? So would I knock here? Yes. And key word is I would knock here first. Does that mean I won't knock this house? Yes, I'll absolutely knock this house. Does that mean I'm not going to knock this house? I'm absolutely going to knock this house. Am I going to knock these homes over here as well? Absolutely. Right? Why? Because once again, I want to speak to every homeowner, right? And I'm bringing this up because sometimes some people, I went, as you guys know, we went door knocking, or I went door knocking in California, and it was a great experience. And one of the guys I was door knocking with was kind of picking and choosing between which house he knocked on. And it's nothing wrong with that. But I actually told him, listen, we should knock on every door, right? Because you don't know if you knock on this door, right? Give me one second. If you knock on this door, right, they may not be interested in solar, but they may refer you to this person, right? And as you speak to this neighbor, yeah, their house is facing, the front of their house is facing south, right? But they may actually go solar. They may not have an issue with putting panels on the front of their house, right? Where this neighbor might have a lot of issues with putting it on the front, right? So my point is you just don't know who you're going to talk to, and you don't know what the situation is going to be, right? Now, can you plan a little bit if you want to, right? You can plan to say, okay, I'm only knocking these doors if you're walking down the street on the right side of the street, right? Because all of them have, the backs of their homes are all facing south, right? So you would knock these homes, you would knock these homes. But my opinion is if you're already here, why not just knock all of them? Talk to everybody, speak to as many people as you can. You never know who's going to refer you to the next. You never know who's going to do what. You never know who's interested. You never know who's not, right? So that would be the best approach from my perspective, right? For those who are door knocking, for those who are, out in the field, once again, making it happen that way. But just another thought, if you're ever looking at an address and you want to have an idea of, okay, what's the situation for that roof, right? Not that this makes a determination of whether you knock on the door or not, but once again, right? Let me just, I'm just going to another random address, right? You can look up the house, right? And just get an idea, right? Okay. Once again, this is facing north, this is facing south. So now I have an idea of if we put panels on the roof, where the panels will go, right? The information that I get from this. This doesn't mean I'm not gonna knock on their door because the front of the house is facing south and they probably don't want panels there, right? That's silly, right? Let's just go to another random house, right? This one is in New Jersey, right? And this one, their house is facing west and facing east, right? So not even south and west, north and south, is facing east and west, right? So once again, I get an idea. I have an idea of what the situation is going to be. I'm also looking to see if there's trees around, shading, things of that nature. And then we just going from there. Yes, Jeremy.
When you're saying the house is north or south, is there a button when you're plugging that all in? Is there a button that you have to put that the house is facing that way, or do you just put the panels on that way, and then that's how you figure out if it's? Because I know when you're looking at the house, you're saying it's north or south, and where to put the panels, but do you have to actually click a button saying that the house is north and south?
Got you. I think I believe I understand your question. So whenever you put an address in, it already is set up for south facing. It's already set up for south, east, west, and north,
Okay.
right? So it's already set up that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I didn't know if you had to actually tell the computer, the AI, that hey, it's facing this way, before you did it.
No, 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 no. Let's show. I want to make sure I understand what you're asking. Are you talking about the direction that the panels are facing, or are you talking about the direction the roof is facing?
The direction of the roof. So when
Direction
you're
of the roof.
looking at a house, how do you so when you're getting ready to do the panels and you're wanting to know if the back side actually, yes. So you're saying that the paper point knows that the house is facing north and south and not east or west?
You kind of broke up a bit. I didn't hear the whole question. Say that again.
So I'm saying, when you go to put the panels on, are you saying that the computer already knows that the house is facing north and south or east and west?
Yes. Right.
Okay.
So as soon as we put this address in and the house pulls up, right? So these arrows are basically letting us know which direction's which, right? So obviously this
Okay.
is north, this is west, this is south, this is south, this is east. And now, it already kind of like aligns with the directions, I should say, right?
Okay.
So you don't have to like put in anything in to kind of like change it. Now, the good part about what you're asking is that you can change the directions here, right? To get a different view or a different angle of just the house and different things of that nature. But north is always going to be facing up, and so on and so forth, right?
Okay.
And I wanted to see the house at a different angle just to get a chance to see, okay, what's the angle here? Let's see if we can turn this a little bit. Nope. Yep. So if I wanted to get a chance to see the different angles of the house and, basically the accuracy of the pitches and things of that nature, that I can turn it around a bit. But most of and you see here, let me see. Okay. I just gotta point it down. So for instance, you see you've seen this take a look at this right here. It's going to tell you the direction, right? So this is the top, obviously. Now we're moving it south, right? So now we're looking at it from the south side of the house, south view, right? Now we go back up. So yeah, I guess long story short, it's already in place as soon as you put the design in. Any other further questions before we jump off at all?
Hey, Idris, I haven't
Yep.
seen this. I think I saw this earlier on when another mentor was doing proposals for me, but it shows something like the where the sun, how the sun can rotate and hit the house. There's some great AI technology. Can you
Yeah.
show us that? Get off.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me show you what you're referring to. Let's see. Where's it at? It's here. Okay. Change that up. Edit this. Let's see. It should be a button here, but there's no button there. Let me use another design. Okay, I think this might have it. Proposals change. Okay, so this is an updated proposal. I believe what you're asking about is here, right? So another thing with the design is that some designs have setbacks, right? Once I click on this, if you look at the roof, right, you'll see that there's specific setbacks, right? So setbacks just basically say you cannot install right around the edges or around these edges, right? So it's about in some cases it may be about a foot or two, right? Just so there's space, right? So that's the setbacks and fire paths. Obviously, if there's a fire, you need to be able to walk around the roof or around the roof. Obviously, it's trees. No trees showing up on this design. And this is LiDAR, right? So it's that, and then this. This is basically what you're referring to, I believe, right? So if you can see this roof as well, right? So the lighter part of the roof, right? The yellow part is where you get the most daylight hours, right? And then the darker it gets, the purple side of the roof is where you get the least amount of daylight hours, right? So this is also a good way, if you didn't know the difference between the south side, the north side, east and the west, this would be a ideal tool to use to figure out where would be the best place to put the panels. But as you're looking at this design, right, you can see that the best place to put the panels are on the south facing side of the roof, right? There's no other part of the roof that's yellow besides the south, right? So this is where the best place would be. Second best would be on the left and the right-hand side of the dormer, right? Same thing here. Then the least likely place to put the panels would be on the back, right? But once again, south is always the best facing side. North is the least. But with every design we do, we always work with what we have. This information we keep to ourselves. We don't necessarily, blurt it all out to the homeowner, because the reality is that at the end of the day, we need to work with what we have, right? And that might just be the north facing side, might be the south facing side, might be the east, might be the west. But we work what we have so we can close the deal. Any other further questions before we close out? Hopefully, you guys got something from this today.
Great
Thank
training,
you.
Idris.
Great training.
Appreciate it very much, man. This was good.
Yes, thank you so
This was
much.
wonderful. Yes.
Absolutely,
Teach.
absolutely.
Appreciate you, Idris. Appreciate you.
Awesome,
you.
awesome.
Fantastic training there, Idris.
Thank you, Idris.
Thank you.
Thank you
Not
so
a
much
problem at all.
for training.
Not a problem at all. I know a few of us.
Gracias.
Absolutely. I have a few other calls taking place, and in addition to that, we have the Millionaire Mentorship call taking place in about an hour. So definitely reach out to the rest of the team to make sure that they get jumped onto that, because I know for a fact we're gonna have Mr. Sam Bean doing it. And I know it's gonna be a powerful Millionaire Mentorship call. So look forward to seeing you guys all on, and I'll talk to you later. Hope everyone has a great night.
You too.
All right.
Thank you, Idris. Thank you,
Thank you,
Idris.
Idris.
No problem. No problem.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Good night.